Anyone who's followed my reviews for a while will know that I often praise a good 7.5 out of 10. I find that games that sit around that score do so because they tried some weird new ideas. Generally, not all those ideas work flawlessly, otherwise they'd be reviewed better. But I love a game that is willing to try something fresh and different. Biomutant is one of those games. I originally picked it up on Xbox Series X back in 2021. Yes, it was rough around the edges, but it also felt like a game out of time. A game from an era where you could take a risk, rather than ensuring that every single release has to be some major blockbuster. Now Biomutant is coming to Nintendo Switch. It looks a little uglier, even the parts that were already going for ugly. And there are no shortage of graphical downgrades. But in the end, this is still very much that perfect flavor of 7.5. Biomutant is a post-apocalyptic game, but not in the general sense. The world ended a long time ago, but you've sort of moved on. The world isn't gray and dead as the genre so often is. Instead, it's bright and colorful. Wildlife has been left to mutate in strange ways, and new cultures have sprung up as a result. However, this newest cycle of life now faces its own apocalypse. You play as a wandering Ronin, orphaned from his family after his village was attacked when he was a child. Your journey will ultimately see you deciding between trying to save the world or letting it burn away. All of this factors into a morality system that will affect the way in which you engage with the world. The story of Biomutant is balanced between several different primary quest lines. One sees you hunting down 4 World Eaters. These World Eaters are giant creatures who are feeding on the World Tree, causing it to die. To reach them, you'll journey across the expansive open world, making use of different vehicles and tools you unlock along the way. Another primary quest focuses on uniting the divided tribes of the world under a single banner. To do this, you'll align yourself with a tribe of your choosing, then work with them to claim the territory of the others. Scattered across all of this is no shortage of side quests and activities as well, ensuring you stay pretty busy. The story itself is told in a unique way. Every character speaks in a garbled language, which is then translated for you by a narrator.
Gulp says he'll bibble anything once, as long as it's drinkalicious, even rocket fuel. He once mixed up some tankers and drank that. It was a real liftoff.
Your attachment to the narrator will determine whether this is charming or grating, but for myself, I really enjoy this element of the storytelling. Moment-to-moment gameplay takes the form of an open-world action RPG. As you explore the world, you'll engage in both ranged and melee combat. Your exact loadout of weapons and style of combat is up to you. I generally found that melee combat felt pretty loose, as enemies don't suffer appropriate knockback when hit. It's unfortunate, as it feels like Biomutant really wants you to engage with its martial arts-inspired melee combat system, but it just isn't very good. As a result, I focused more on ranged combat. Here I opted for dual-wielding 2 pistols. As you progress, you'll not only find new weapons, but new components to modify them or just build your own from scratch. The same goes for armor components, which can be modified with the scraps you find throughout the map. The world is covered in hidden caves to explore, villages to rescue from attack, and people to help. That said, the rewards for these activities are generally comparable to what you'll get in random loot drops, and I found this made side quests less compelling, as I rarely got anything particularly useful out of them that I couldn't find by just wandering around. Though I do like that each named area in the game comes with a checklist for every major loot cache to find in it. This makes it very easy to tell when you finish cleaning out an area. As for the Switch port itself, it isn't the prettiest, but it is solid from a purely performance standpoint. In terms of image quality, you're looking at an underlying resolution of 720p docked and 480p handheld, both of which are then nicely upscaled. The Switch targets 30 frames per second and generally maintains this goal, the exception being brief traversal stutters when moving quickly through the open world. This appears to be caused by chunks of the world loading in, but it's never more than a brief moment. I was also occasionally able to get some slowdown in large combat encounters, but for the most part, even these held up well. All that being said, the cutbacks are pretty aggressive to achieve this. The original release of Biomutant is actually a pretty nice looking game. The Switch version looks pretty rough by comparison. Foliage has been pulled back hugely, which has a significant effect on the look of the open world. Screen space reflections are missing for large bodies of water, the depth of field effect is missing from combat encounters, and perhaps most of all, texture resolution is pretty bad. None of the environmental textures hold up to inspection. On the other hand, there are some nice features that have been preserved. A well-implemented passive temporal anti-aliasing ensures a clean and reasonably sharp image, and this is helped along by a sharpening filter which can be freely adjusted in the options menu. Screen space ambient occlusion is still in effect, which really helps in more enclosed areas to fill in corners with shade. Speaking of shade, real-time dynamic shadows from the sun and moon are still active, albeit at a low resolution. Most importantly, fur shaders are still present on every character. They aren't as high quality as they are on other systems, but they still generally look pretty nice and have a huge effect on the visual identity of the game. Biomutant is one of those games that isn't going to appeal to everyone. Even the people like me who enjoy it won't argue that it's flawless. But it is an ambitious game developed by a small team that is happy to try new things and take risks. Biomutant is one of those AA games that you would have picked up on the PlayStation 2 and absolutely loved as a kid. When you return to it as an adult, it may not hold up that well, but those underlying, not quite tangible things that you loved about it would shine through. This is that sort of low-budget experiment that we rarely see these days, and I can't help but enjoy it. Beneath its flaws is an interesting open-world RPG that manages to hold up pretty well on Nintendo Switch.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.